Thank you, Peter, for your time today.
No, you're welcome.
Really was very keen to catch up with your experiences over the past 18 months or so. You came in after Greg Farr. Certainly he had driven a very ambitious agenda of change and IT change, left a lot of things going and very successfully. So I was wondering if you could tell us a bit about how you've been going and finding the challenges in front of you.
Okay, been a really interesting 18 months. I think when you look at when I came in, we had a number of things in the early stages of just starting in the delivery cycle or in the late stages of approval. So a lot of what we've been doing in the last 18 months is driving a number of those things through the final stage of approval and really working to get a great deal of delivery certainty around the things that we had in train. So I think it's really about, if I characterise it around three things I've been focusing on. One is to get delivery certainty, so we deliver on what we commit to. The second thing we've been doing is really starting to shape the organisation to move into the new world of outsourced services and outsourced infrastructure services. And thirdly, and that's more in the latter part of the period, is we're starting to think about, well, what's the next generation of change? Where do we go to from here? The current change will really remediate a lot of our infrastructure issues, but then we have to move into the world of applications and information, and what does that reform journey look like over the next 3, 5, 7 years? So that's been a real focus of what we've been doing. Very much.
So that's a very common theme that we're hearing, is this shift from sort of owning everything to really being very selective about what you're doing and where you're getting it from. A lot of it obviously is cloud driven. I imagine that with the sensitivities that you have, that a lot of it has to be done in probably a bit different way than a lot of the other agencies. Can you tell us a bit about what you have?
Yeah, so certainly a lot of what we're doing now, you probably characterise it as a private cloud, if that's the term you want to do it. So it's a lot about consolidation. It's all about bringing a lot of our services into consolidated environments and delivering them centrally. So we can do those in a consistent way. We can manage the service levels, we can manage the currency of the equipment, the currency of the software, and we can get a much better end experience across the defence organisation. I think if you look a little bit about where the market's going and what's happening, I think that one of our challenges as we go forward is, well, how do we consume some of those services in a different way? So yes, today we typically do everything ourselves, but how can we move to a different service delivery model over the next coming years? I think partly as the market matures and is able to offer different services, and maybe start to offer differentiated services that can meet some of our unique requirements around security, etc. So certainly today it is about consolidation and scale on the basis that we've got, but I think once we've done that, the next generation of change may well look at doing things in a different way.
It is definitely a significant inflection point.
Indeed.
Across every part of the IT organisation. How are you finding compared to your previous roles? You certainly have an extensive private sector background. How does that compare with?
Well, I think that certainly in large private sector organisations, some of the complexities around stakeholder management, decision making, how you drive change are not dissimilar. I think a lot of large organisations have a number of similarities. The public sector has some other unique requirements that the public sector has, but I think part of the learning is really about, well, how do we engage with our business partners, how do we take them on the journey of change, and how do we support them on their journeys of change. So I think a lot of what I've learned in the past I'm able to reuse in this role. And certainly, part of the last 18 months has been about learning about how we do things, how the public sector drives change, drives approvals, how we engage, which has certainly been a great experience. But certainly I've been able to work through that, and now we're starting to make some progress around some of those things. So I think there's a lot of similarities between large-scale organisations, whether in the private sector or the public sector.
Sure. You talk about partners. Obviously, that ties into that requirement to really tap into the available skills, the resources, the services, especially that are coming in here. Do you find that the market is providing what you need, or is there an opportunity for people to kind of build up a number of capabilities that you're still looking for?
So I think there's I'll maybe take a macro answer to that, David. I think the services market, certainly in Australian context, is still maturing. I think there are, I think as I read recently, that we still spend more on printer toner in this country than we do on cloud-based services. I think we spend in excess of $2 billion a year on printer toners, and yet we're going to a paper-free office, so something doesn't correlate in that. But I mean, I think the message around there is those services are still maturing. I think we're in conversation with a number of those larger service providers, and they come and ask us, well, what sort of things do they have to do or be able to do in their services to demonstrate they meet our requirements. So we've got a number of those conversations ongoing as people start to think about, well, what makes defence unique, or some of our unique requirements, how can they meet some of those requirements to enable us to use some of those services. So I think you'll see over the next months and a couple of years some of those services mature to a point where we probably can consider using them. I think the services market will continue to grow, there's no doubt, and that stat that I gave you before will certainly blow out very, very quickly. But I think, you know, we're probably a little, you know, in terms of Australia. I mean, some of the large service providers are only just coming to Australia, you know, actively. You know, in the last year, they're starting to grow their capability. There's certainly opportunity in the market, I think, for them in this country, and I think that's why we're seeing them starting to invest. They realise there is opportunity here. You know, they realise that they've got to come probably onshore to be able to get a number of Australian companies and particularly government to be able to use them, and we're seeing some of those investments start to emerge. So I think over the next couple of years you'll see those change, and you'll see the public sector, and particularly some of the agencies like my own in the public sector, really be able to start to consider those services a viable alternative.
Mm-hmm. It's certainly an imperative. I think we're seeing more and more in the government. There's been a lot of centralisation of the technology, of the resources. You had your own centralisation project going on, haven't you, with some pretty impressive numbers. How's that coming along?
So I think, look, I mean, you know, certainly if you look at the main big programs we've got running at the moment, and I'll probably address all three of them, you know, at once. Certainly, you know, we signed off the major contract with Telstra in April last year. That's moving through some of the delivery milestones at the moment, and we're certainly aiming to have that across 3 of our main bases in November this year, and we're still tracking towards that. Our next generation desktop program is going into delivery at the end of in the first part of April, so we're starting to get that one moving. And then the centralised processing, we're right at the end of that tender process. So we will get the final bids from Lockheed Martin and IBM at the end of March, and we'll then go through the final evaluation and the government approval process after that. So that will then take us to a decision point around what we're going to do there, and then we'll understand what we're going to do. But if I look at the third one, it's absolutely imperative. You know, we process over something in the order of 280 locations within Australia. We will bring that down. We have to. It's just, you know, for lots of both physical security and information security. You know, get that down, get better control, understand what's going on, better able to secure our environment, reduce our risk, and reduce our costs as well. So yeah, they're really quite critical to us to build the future capability to which to expand the other capabilities we need to deliver to the defence organisation.
Most definitely. One of the areas that I think everyone's struggling with a bit is mobility, with all these devices that are coming in and out. Obviously, in an environment like defence, that's a particular challenge. Maybe you can tell us a bit about how you're managing that in terms of the context of the new environment that you're building.
So we will certainly create a mobile capability within the new environment we're building. I think that one of the things I've been reflecting on recently is, you know, the iPhone is about 6 years old now, I think, in 2008, and that is in the long term of technology probably still relatively young, and we see new devices coming to the market all the time. I think we are starting to see a shift in how people interact with information and how they do that, and how you deliver information to the end consumer of that. And I think one of the things that I start to think about is really the key is what information you're delivering to the person and how they're consuming that information, for what purpose. Am I concerned about the device? Yes, but I'm probably more concerned about the information and security and privacy of the information, and what device we deliver it on, possibly a little bit less concerned. There are so many in the market. Look, having said that, we are traditionally a BlackBerry user in defence as the mobile phone and ability to deliver email. As part of our changes, we will introduce capability initially around the Apple platform into defence and able to manage that. And then once we've done that, we'll start to think about other devices. But it will be based on both demand and drive from the business, but also our ability to deliver the information in a secure and manageable way, which I think is really the critical point. And whatever device it is will be the most appropriate for the job.
It's been talked about a lot that this is an important way to do it, and managing the data and trying to get that separation of controls. I mean, in a defence environment, there has been that kind of control very well for a while, hasn't there? Does that translate well into the mobile world when you're talking about controlling the data in this way?
I think if you look at a macro level, more and more organisations, as you end up with more and more data, how you manage that data and how you understand its relevance and importance in a business context. So whether you're a retailer or a logistics company or defence, in our basis, it is about, well, what's the data important for, and how do you tag it, how do you allow access to it, how do you put the controls around it. So I think, in some ways we're no different to a lot of other organisations. We probably face similar challenges. In some areas, we've been on a records management drive for a number of years, and we have something close to 70,000 users on our records management platform now. So we have a strong platform that we can store records in. And then it's how do we manage that in a more proactive way ongoing, and how do we manage a number of the different sources of data and different types of data feeds coming into the organisation, some of the challenges we're going to face looking forward.
It's definitely a complex one, but I don't need to tell you that.
Indeed.
I imagine your desk would have been very full when you sat down at it for the first time.
It was very full, and I think I said I spent the first few months just reading a lot about material and trying to understand the sheer breadth from I guess the more traditional corporate type IT things that you deal in any organisation, right out to unique things about defence in terms of the military capability, what we deliver to the military, how we support the military. In the end, our role is to support the ADF in whatever mission it's engaged in, whether it's a humanitarian mission or other missions that the government chooses to send them on. And really, that's how do we do that? What does the end user need? What do the soldiers in the field need? And how do we do that? How do we help them?
It's definitely a far-reaching and complex role. Now, the strategic reform program, which is the overreaching change program, is the kind of thing that would probably make most CIOs wake up and cold sweats in the middle of the night.
Indeed.
It's designed to save about 20 billion over 10 years. Is this the kind of target that you think will be hit with technology, or is it mainly about leadership and about the vision and the things that you can do as a CIO?
So I mean, the strategic reform program was 20 billion overall of defence, and thankfully not. But I think in most organisations these days, I mean, we had parts of it that were just purely for my group, but a lot of it is about a lot of the elements of the program are about enablement, and how do we enable some of the functionality, some of the things we want to do. So if I go through the various elements of SRP, a number of those are enabled by our ability to implement technology solutions. A number of those we're working through and moving forward. I think the opportunity comes, well, how do we automate more and more? And as with most large organisations, it's about that process re-engineering, process automation, process digitisation. How do we actually drive some of those efficiencies through the organisation? So SRP touches on all parts of the organisation and has a lot of technology enablement behind it.
It's a lot.
A lot, yes.
It's definitely a whole lot.